I'm Nick Binedell.
And I'm Adrian Saville, and we're talking about Southeast Asia and why you should go see. The part of the conversation, Nick, has been about the context. That was our first video together. Then about some specific country focus, our second video. And here, in our third part, it's what does this mean? What do we take away from this? And one of the things that really strikes me, that stands out from this conversation, is here is the fastest growing region in the world over the past 20, 30 years. You've seen remarkable country transition, yet in conversation with policymakers, regulators, executives, MBA students in South Africa, very often this part of the conversation is just off the table. That the focus is on the West, Europe, and here you've got this economic powerhouse. I was interested in a visit to the Philippines recently. I was speaking to Nate Clark. He's the CEO of GoTime, fastest growing digital bank in the Philippines, out of South African origins. Conrad Jonker, GIBS MBA alumni, is the author of this incredible creation. And at dinner with Nate, I asked him, where are the other South African businesses? And a little bit of head scratching. He says, well, there's us. And Goldfields, which is a legacy South African business, CarTrack, which does vehicle tracking monitoring, and Aspen Pharmacare. This is remarkable. You've got 100 million population, an economy that's romping along, 5 and 6% economic growth, and South Africans are missing.
Well, of course, it's understandable given the history of our relations with different parts of the world, where we had a very modest, other than people coming from Malaya many centuries ago, a modest set of interactions, and we were isolated for many years by those countries who wouldn't trade, invest, or deal with us. But yes, I think you're quite right. There's so much potential. Think of Indonesia, 230 million people. Vietnam, nearly 100 million people. Thailand, 18 million. These are big populations undergoing explosive growth. And so, yeah, there should be a high appetite to go and learn from them.
So if we could just stay with a couple of the countries that you've mentioned there. I've gotten to know Time Bank, the South African origin Time Bank has now expanded into other parts of the world. They happen to have their coding business called TimeX, is based in Vietnam. 600 Vietnamese coders producing this absolutely magnificent code, world-class code out of Ho Chi Minh. They expand into Vietnam in partnership with the Gokongwei family. And your point about understanding the structure of the country. And so they are in partnership with the Gokongwei family in Philippines. And this helps them establish their retail footprint. That turns them into the GoTime, into the fastest growing bank in the Philippines. 5 million customers onboarded in 2 years.
Amazing story.
And
look, there are some tentacles. So Sasol's been in Singapore for many years. Bidvest has been in Singapore. I think quite a few companies locate their Asian office in Singapore because that's Singapore's attraction.
But should there not be more?
Absolutely. No, I think we say the same thing.
Yeah.
There's so much more potential for us, and for two ways. So I don't know where the Filipino running the Durban port's got to, but I mean, it's got to be reciprocal trade, and we have a lot to offer them, and they've got a lot to offer us.
So this takes us into a conversation of now. We started our discussion, series 1 of these 3-part videos, talking about 1985, your visit to Malaysia. We're now in 2025. It's a different world.
Yeah, we are in a different world. I mean, let me say two things. Firstly, as you said, go see, which has got several meanings, but I would urge people to go and travel to these countries. You can be on holiday, but go and look with your eyes open. Your eyes can't read what your feet can't show you. And it's walking the streets, talking to the people, experiencing the economy, making business contacts. And, our embassies should be playing a far more strategic role an economically strategic role, not just a political role, to encourage that growth and investment. And of course, as we all are saying at this point in 2025, the geopolitics of the world are shifting.
Yeah.
And South Africa is going to have to play its cards very carefully.
Look how far we've got without using the word Trump.
Exactly. Well, now we're about to use the word Trump to say the Trumpian world order, which seems to be emerging, it may change direction, but it seems to be emerging, is a different world order than the order I've lived under in my entire life. So there's going to be some balancing and rebalancing, and that rebalancing will create opportunities. And, you know, my advice is learn from everyone and copy no one. Go everywhere and see everything if you can. Send out young executives to go and look to make contact, establish bridgeheads, and see if there are markets for your products and services. And I really like your point, partner always, because we don't know the customs and culture of these countries. They are different to ours. But there is tremendous prospect. And I mean, let me make it broader for a moment and say everything east of Benoni is the story of China, of Korea, of India. You know, we're so fortunate.
So east of Benoni is the Far East.
That was the Far East. That was what was called the Far East when I grew up. But go east of there. India is one of the great stories of the last 2 years. Go there, and we're so privileged to have such a big Indian community here. This is another world view into the world. And we aren't going to drop our links elsewhere. We're going to build our African links. But we should build our Asian links and realize what great examples, what great people there are, and leaders. I mean, very strong entrepreneurial, often led by Chinese, people of Chinese origin in Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Half the top 12 families in the Philippines have Chinese origin.
Yeah.
So that's
the Gokongwe family, which I've mentioned as a case in point.
Right. So you want to understand this map. You know, you can't go blind into a territory. First, get the maps, and then see where you should travel and go.
You and I speak about structure, growth structure very often, and you reference deep structure, geography, culture, history, demography. My reference is to economic growth structure, using 6 factors that in my work identify as powerful drivers. And it's I think it's notable that if we go to that Southeast Asian region, to a country, the 6-factor model suggests that those countries are in the business of 4, 5, 6% economic growth for the next generation. So those could be countries that make the rules for the next 20 years, whilst Trump might be in the business of breaking the rules.
Could be. I mean, let's not over-exaggerate the size of these, of Southeast Asia. It's a $5 trillion economy. You know, the global
but it's a better part of 1 billion people.
Yes, 700 million.
Yeah.
So it is big. But it's not the whole show.
Sure.
China's a bigger show. India's a bigger show.
Okay.
Japan is still a show, although it's fairly static. But it's just to look east is what we should be doing. And inspired, you know, we always talk about business, but be inspired by the cultural dynamics and the religious differences of the biggest Muslim population in the world, a huge Spanish Catholic population, as we've mentioned, Buddhists. You know, it's a very culturally diverse region, and relish its differences and go and see for yourself has got to be part of it. I want to turn us a little bit to our own region here.
You took the words.
Right. I've described South Africa in the last 5 years or so as becoming an island. It's kind of far away from big markets, and its neighbors are not very dynamic. And yet our future must be significantly determined by SADC or Sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm just very hopeful because nothing much is happening right now. I know we're trying to do the African Free Trade Agreement and the initiatives in that area, but we have 300 million people in this close proximate market. But between themselves and outside funders and South Africa, we've got to be developing these markets more aggressively. Because if you put the 300 million together, well, then you've got a sizable regional market for many, many products and services. And so we've got to keep our eye not only on Southeast Asia, not only on the Middle East, not only on East Asia, but also on our local neighbours and their future, which at the moment is not looking very encouraging.
Well, I mean, it's not looking very encouraging. There's promising intent in terms of, you've made reference to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, but beyond intent, that needs to be supported by infrastructure. You have to have that enabling infrastructure, and the infrastructure is the soft and the hard infrastructure.
Sure.
The hard infrastructure needs to pivot, to use our old COVID word, from being extractive infrastructure to being inclusive infrastructure.
And I think that's all very good and sensible. But just take what the US has done by cutting PEPFAR and USAID. This will do major damage to the bottom end of Malawi and Zambia, these kinds of countries. And I'm not sure who will replace that support. But back to our earlier discussion in part 2, that is, in a sense, it saves lives and it's humanitarian, but it is not that productive investment that is needed, as you say, to build the infrastructure. The Chinese, of course, are around. Maybe Europe will scale up its investment in this part of southern Africa, south and southeast Africa. But we must keep an eye on this. This is our world. If Asian countries have commonalities of history and people and trade, well, we have the same in the southern African region. And I suppose, as I say, the eyes can't read what the feet can't see. You've got to go. I went to Malawi last year to work there and to see how far behind they are. They haven't got to the beginning stage of an economic takeoff. And Zambia and the Congo is a great big mess. And these are vital countries to get right.
So if there were, in bringing together our conversation, if I could ask you for, I guess, some closing words of wisdom for a policymaker, for an executive, and for a master's student.
So the first thing I would say is, I've always said this when I teach strategy. If you're in company A and you don't really know your opposition company B, you don't know what A is. So if you live within a country and its history and its present conditions, and you don't have a fairly good understanding of B and C and E and F and G, you don't know what A is. And I fear South Africa needs to open up more its understanding of these dynamics. I'm not talking now about foreign policy. I'm talking about executives in companies, because they've got to look to these markets. South Africa is struggling to generate a growth rate that's going to lead to prosperity. So it needs to look at other societies. And we've chosen, you and I, Southeast Asia as a sort of introduction to that region. And I think it's a very useful place to study and go to. But my main insight is learn from everyone and copy no one. You've got to find your own formula, your own strategy, your own approach. What would be your main insight to share?
I think that history plays a very big part in shaping where you arrive. But where you get to is your ability to, And you and I speak often about the difference between fate and choice. And
fate, luck, and choice.
Fate, luck, and choice. And where you arrive in this moment, you can't change. That's your circumstance.
So I thought when I first went to the Philippines, when I first went to India, I thought, there's no way. When I went to the Philippines, I thought, there's no way this is going to happen. Well, it hasn't happened fully, but it's happened largely. South Africa's got to get to this takeoff point that people like North talk about, the doorstep conditions, our institutions, the rule of law, democratic systems, participation of people, social capital and trust. These are the great foundations.
Acknowledging the fate and getting into the business of choice and design.
Getting over the fate. And as we talked about in Vietnam, saying in spite of this terrible past, actually we're going to build something for the future. And then having the pragmatic drive to do it. The doi moi you referred to, and the street cleaners, and my piece of fruit that was sculpted like a perfect flower. That's the level of practicality we need. We dream too much and do too little. Got to get that ratio changed.
Nick, that's a great note to finish what's been a fantastic conversation. Thanks for the time.
I enjoyed it. Thanks, Adrian.